The memo from my property management company lay on my desk, impossible to ignore. Rent overdue, Unit 1205, Huntington Towers, third notice. I ran my fingers over the names on the lease. James and Marie Anderson. My parents. 5 years ago, they stood in my tiny living room, voices sharp with disapproval. Dad had laughed bitterly. Real estate, in this economy, you'll be back here broke within a month. Mom hadn't held back either. Your brother Michael had the good sense to go into banking. You'll never amount to anything, Natalie, never. Now, their text messages filled my phone screen, each one more frantic than the last. Natalie, this has to be a mistake. $3,000 for a 2-bedroom? That's absurd. Call us. The power company's threatening to shut us off. They didn't know the truth. Huntington Towers, the luxury building they bragged about moving into 6 months ago, belonged to Anderson Real Estate Holdings. My company. Named after the family that never believed in me. Miss Anderson, Julia, my assistant, appeared in the doorway. Your brother's here again. I smoothed my designer blazer, a far cry from the thrift store wardrobe I had when I walked out of their house. Send him in. Michael charged in, banking suit wrinkled, panic bleeding through his usual smugness. This is out of control. Mom and Dad can't afford the rent hike. You have to fix this. Do I? I kept my voice level, businesslike. That unit's market rate is $3,500. They're paying $3,000. Consider it a courtesy discount. His jaw clenched. It was $2,200 when they moved in. And now it's $3,000. I replied smoothly, welcome to real estate. Michael, ever heard of supply and demand? Pretty basic stuff. You did go to banking school, right? He slammed his palms against my desk. They're our parents, Natalie. Funny, I said. They didn't seem too parental when I asked them for a loan to start my business. Remember what Dad said? Only fools invest in real estate. I tapped on my laptop, pulling up a spreadsheet, but they did give you $50,000 for your can't-miss crypto scheme. How'd that turn out again? Michael paled. We both knew the money vanished with the crash, along with the promises he'd made. That was different, he muttered. I was trying to help them. And I'm running a business, I said, one they happen to live in, by choice. I might add, it looked prestigious enough for their friends, didn't it? They don't even know you own it. No, I said, smiling faintly, just like they didn't know I owned their last building, or the one before that. He blinked. What? I turned my laptop toward him. On the screen, the Anderson Real Estate Holdings portfolio. 3 luxury buildings, all purchased in the past 5 years. Remember Morton Street? They left after the rent increase. Before that, it was the Wellington. Same story. You've been making them move? I've been adjusting rents to market rates. If they keep picking my properties, that's on them. Although, I leaned back, they may start running out of options. I own a good chunk of high-end rentals in this city now. Michael collapsed into a chair, the leather groaning beneath him. Why didn't you ever tell them? Tell them what? That the daughter they dismissed now owns more real estate than Dad ever dreamed of? That the so-called failure built a portfolio worth more than his lifetime earnings? I stood, walking to the tall windows that framed the skyline. My skyline. They made their choices, now they're living with the results. But the electricity, Michael's voice cracked. Dad's on medication, he needs refrigeration. They should have thought of that before blowing the rent money on a luxury cruise last month. I turned back to him. Yes, I know about that. My team is very thorough. His phone buzzed. He looked down, the blood drained from his face. It's Mom, they just got an eviction notice. I glanced at the clock. Right on time. Legal's never late. Natalie, please. He stood, desperation tightening his voice. I know they treated you terribly. I know I did too, but they're still our parents. I picked up the property report again, letting the silence draw out. You know what I remember most about the day I left? I asked, not looking at him. It wasn't Dad yelling. It wasn't Mom's disappointment. It was you, smirking at the door, telling me I wouldn't last a month. His face fell. I was wrong. Yes, I said coolly, you were. I leaned back in my chair. And now, you all get to see just how wrong. Michael hesitated, then asked quietly, what do you want? Money? An apology? I smiled, remembering the endless family dinners where his financial genius was praised while I was treated like a cautionary tale. I want you to go home and tell them who their landlord is. Every rent hike, every building they had to leave, that was me. Let them know. They'll be crushed. They'll be educated, I corrected, about karma, about consequences, and about underestimating the daughter they thought was nothing. As he turned to leave, his shoulders sagging under the weight of the truth, I called after him. Oh, and Michael, power gets cut at 5, better get home if you want to help them pack. At exactly 4:55 p.m., I stood in the lobby of Huntington Towers, watching the security feed on my tablet. Right on time, the maintenance crew was heading up to Unit 1205. In 5 minutes, my parents would understand what it meant to be powerless, literally and figuratively. Miss Anderson, Julia appeared at my side. Your parents are demanding to speak with the building's owner. They're insistent. I'll bet. I smoothed the fabric of my designer dress, a piece that cost more than the wardrobe they mocked me for years ago. Tell them the owner will meet them in the penthouse office. 10 minutes. The private elevator whispered its way to the top floor. I stood in silence, the city rising around me through glass walls. Dad once told me, real estate is a man's game, you won't survive. Mom had chimed in, at least get a respectable job, like Michael. Now I owned the skyline. The penthouse office gleamed, glass, steel, clean lines and a desk where I'd signed the paperwork for this very building. While they still thought I was broke, chasing dreams. At 5:15 sharp, Julia led them in. They froze when they saw me behind the desk. Natalie, Mom said, the confidence cracking in her voice. What are you doing here? Dad demanded. We asked for the owner. I gestured to the chairs across from me. You're looking at her. Their faces flickered, anger, confusion, disbelief. Anderson Real Estate Holdings, I said. You never questioned the name? Mom dropped into a chair, her knockoff purse clutched like a lifeline. This is your building? This one, and Morton Street, and the Wellington. I counted them off on my fingers. Every unreasonable rent increase, every unfair lease condition, that was me. Dad shook his head. No, you couldn't. You weren't capable. I tapped a button on the remote, and the office screen lit up with my portfolio, 15 properties, $100 million in assets. All earned while they dismissed me as a failure. Mom whispered, but Michael said. He found out an hour ago. I glanced at my watch. Speaking of timing, how's the electricity? As if on cue, Dad's phone buzzed. He checked it, color draining from his face. They shut it off. Your father's medication. Needs refrigeration, I know. I opened a drawer and laid 2 documents on the desk. I have solutions, 2 options. They leaned forward, clinging to hope, maybe expecting mercy, a sign I still needed their approval. Option 1, you acknowledge the lease breach, vacate within 24 hours, and I return your security deposit. That's more grace than you ever showed me. And the other? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. You stay, pay market rate, $3,500 a month, plus a new deposit. I paused, letting the weight of it settle. Their silence was heavy, stunned. I stood, the city stretching out behind me like a kingdom. You always told me I'd never make it. Now you can live with the reality you refuse to believe in. You'll tell everyone exactly who owns this building, I said. Their silence stretched, brittle and stunned. Every time you boast about your address, every time you host one of your little dinner parties, make sure you mention the daughter you said would never amount to anything. Dad surged to his feet, sending his chair clattering to the floor. This is blackmail. No, I replied, standing as well. My Louboutins brought me eye to eye with the man who once told me I'd never understand business. This is accountability, something you never thought I'd grow into. His face twisted, searching for solid ground. You got your brother's startup money, I said, voice steady, and I got laughed out of the room. That was different, he snapped. Michael had a real plan. I gave a sharp laugh. He had a crypto pyramid dressed up in tech jargon. I had research, projections, a scalable model, but you never even looked at my proposal, did you? Mom's mascara began to streak down her cheeks. We thought we were protecting you, she whispered. Real estate is risky. And now you're the ones facing eviction, I said, sliding the papers across the desk. Poetic, isn't it? You have 1 hour. Option 1, vacate voluntarily, get your deposit back. Option 2, stay, Pay market rate, plus a new deposit. After that, no deals. Dad's voice cracked, brittle with disbelief. You do this to your own parents? You did this to yourselves. I turned toward the city skyline, the empire I'd built brick by brick while they weren't watching. Every dismissal, every time you called Michael a success while ignoring me, every time you moved into one of my buildings for the prestige, without ever wondering how I could afford to live here too. Mom's breath hitched, her voice was barely audible. The penthouse. When you skipped my Christmas dinner last year because you were too busy, that was my home, I said without turning. Just like this building, just like Morton Street, just like the Wellington, you've been living in my shadow for years, you just never bothered to look up. I turned back to face them. Your rent checks helped fund my expansion into luxury real estate, so yes, ironic. Dad sank back into the chair, suddenly old, suddenly small. Why didn't you ever tell us? He asked, hollow. I met his gaze. Would you have listened, or just dismissed it, like you always did? My phone buzzed, a message from security. Packing underway, movers in Unit 1205, all on schedule. Professional movers, of course, I wasn't cruel, just precise. Natalie, please, Mom said, reaching for me, we can fix this, we're still family. I gave a soft, tired laugh. No, family supports you when you chase something bold. Family believes in you even when the world doesn't. You didn't act like family when it mattered, now you want mercy from the daughter you ignored? I gathered my bag and phone. 1 hour, Julia will take your answer. I paused at the door. Where are you going? Dad asked, voice thinned by disbelief. Home, I said, turning slightly, to my penthouse, the one you were always too busy to visit. I met their stunned eyes one last time. And don't bother calling Michael, his new home loan, approved through one of my companies, he's learning about karma too. That night, I stood in my penthouse, glass of champagne in hand, city lights glittering beneath me like jewels in a crown. A message from Julia arrived. They chose option 2. Of course they did, pride may be loud, but it rarely wins against comfort. Another message followed, this one from Mom. We were wrong about you, so wrong. I replied. Yes, you were, rent's due on the 1st, don't be late. Then I blocked the number and sipped my champagne. Because success isn't just about proving people wrong. Sometimes, it's about making them live with the proof, every single day. I looked out over the skyline, mine now, and smiled. They once said I'd never be anything. Now they're paying to live in my building, under my name, on my terms. Turns out, karma has impeccable taste in real estate.